Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gastil, for that talk. And for anyone that arrived just a few minutes after we started, my name is Maria Zubin, and I'm assisting with the Center for Public Involvement. And I'm going to get cozy with John as we go through the Q&A portion of this evening for the benefit of our webinar participants, of which there are approximately 90 from a multitude of countries. So I will be speaking here and also into this mic, and we'll have to tag team if you don't mind.
I don't.
Okay. So I will be taking questions from the audience, and we'll start there, and then Asia will be assisting by providing John some questions from our online participants. So we will start with our first question. Is there anyone that has one? Just right in front. Yes, please.
Okay, John, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
One of the traditions in this participatory democracy thinking is that it's somehow untarnished by communication, that no one packages anything or spins anything. It's a beautiful, pure process. And I admire that, but I think all of these examples tonight show that, in fact, information does have to be packaged. There has to be real thought given to communicating. And so I'm interested in your thoughts about that. The question here is, how do you get effective communication without losing the sense it's impartial and fair?
Sorry, I'll interrupt and just repeat the question for our webinar participants. So how do you get effective communication through the process, the deliberative process, without it seeming impartial or unfair?
So I'll try to give a kind of shotgun answer to this, because there can actually be lots of different micro questions. So, and I'm going to focus here on the Oregon case. As I said, that's the one I've most directly studied. So the first thing is, sometimes you need to worry about how to frame the question. In this case, in British Columbia, for instance, the question was put to the people, but somebody put it, right? So when you're framing questions, one thing you can do is be incredibly inclusive. Try to identify key stakeholders and get them at the table, and you might actually be surprised at how eager they are to frame a question that will then be studied, because they're all convinced that they're going to win. That's one great thing about sort of egocentrism in democracy. There's a second communication problem, which is, let's say we get our Citizens Initiative Review panel together, which is not a framing problem. The issue is defined by the measure on the ballot. It's yes or no on that. But now you've got a problem of who do we invite? Who are our expert witnesses? Who's the pro and con? And the pro and con isn't too hard. But who are your neutral experts? One of the things they did is, in Oregon, they created a huge menu, and then the citizens themselves, over the course of the event, got to pick and choose who they wanted to hear from. I don't know if there were some broken hearts from those who weren't circled, but that gave them some control over that. And then, as far as the message they sent out, they saw it as a communication problem. Those Oregonians did. They were editing their statement. Some of them stayed up very late that night, fussing over words, and they kept saying to each other, let's not write this for, a PhD. Let's write this for the person who's reading this. So I think there can be an awareness of it at every step of the process.
And our next question will come from our webinar participant, Salim from Colombia. How do you think there must be a relationship between democracy innovations and the level of trust of the people in the government? Efficiency or transparency on the decision process?
That's a great question. I'm going to argue that there's kind of a two-step process that I would recommend. If a public official came to me and said, I have political will right now to do some of this, but I've got problems with legitimacy and perceptions that we're not trustworthy, I think your first step is to empower the public. And that's what you saw the DC Liberals did, right? They didn't say, hey, we've got a great new electoral system. We just want almost every seat, and trust us, this new one's going to be even better, right? Whoa, you're going to cook it. Right? No, they handed it over to the citizens. So give power up, give it to the citizens, and let the citizens start having a relationship with each other. These small random samples and panels and so on can start interacting with the public directly. And you don't miss your chance to say, you realize why that's there? We put that there. We did that. I'm not going to say anything, but we did that. Right? Some trust is building up that you're actually helping to facilitate citizens working directly with citizens, getting to know each other, trust each other. I mean, that's part of the reason this is it's advantageous to do participatory budgeting and so on. You can get credit for giving the power away. The deliberative poll is a process I didn't talk about, but the advocates of that process love pointing out the Chinese example, where basically a municipal government said, would you people stop screaming at us? You hate everything we do. We're going to empower you to decide. Here's 14 different projects. Pick one and shut up. It's China, baby. And they did that. And that's incredibly popular. Everyone wanted to talk about deliberative democracy in China because, oh my God, it gets you off the hook, right? So you can actually build up some legitimacy. But then, if you have that legitimacy, you might insert yourself back into the process a little more actively. And you can find ways of having the potential to amend and revise or have processes be advisory. When I talked with some folks here in Edmonton, I was saying about advisory processes. That's great if you want to advise government, but what usually happens then is government says, great, okay, thanks. That might be useful, it might not, but I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great week. Goodbye. What you need at that point is, if it really is advisory, you need a commitment right from the beginning from the government to say, when you give us advice, we are going to respond to it substantively, precisely, and directly to you and anyone else who cares to listen. I can't tell you that we're going to do what you recommend. That we are elected and responsible for and accountable for the decisions, but we're also now accountable for explaining them, justifying them, giving arguments for both the things that we agree with you on and the things we don't. And I guarantee you, the first government that does that, be a little judicious, do some of the things they recommend, but when you don't do some, make a big fuss about the fact that you're not doing what they recommended and why. And tell them, it might be something like, that's outside our fiscal scope, but I have an idea of maybe we can pursue a grant next year in a competition and maybe we can do something. Or, you know what, that's unconstitutional. We can debate this, but we had our legal counsel check and they don't think we can do that. Wouldn't that be amazing if government said, no, because, not no, but I'm going to give you this cool ticket, which you can take for a free, cappuccino. Okay? No, give them a reason.
All right, we'll take another question from the audience. Yes.
Yeah. My question is just related to, I would like to thank you for your talk, first of all.
You're welcome.
And my question is just related to countries where democracy was kind of imposed in a modern way. And I'm going to frame around that.
Hit me with a for instance to help out.
For instance, that's my second part. For instance, let's say Mexico, for example, where 60 million people don't really fully human rights. How would you implement just across the article, for example, we're assuming they know they have an education, they can read and write. How would you just come across to explain what you're trying to explain to people that cannot even read and write? So that was my question.
So just to reiterate, the question is in reference to democracies or countries that have had democracy imposed on them in a modern way, and how they may have some struggles with understanding the deliberative democracy concept.
Sí. Muchas gracias para el ejemplo. Y la pregunta es sobre Mexico, okay? My Spanish is about that good and I'm stopping. But at least I got some. Grew up in San Diego, so, what are you going to learn? German? Why? So I started with Kerala for a reason. Now, Kerala actually has a relatively high literacy rate. But people all over India are thinking, okay, maybe Kerala is different, but maybe it's not. Maybe we can really do this. And I guarantee you, a lot of the people participating in those grants don't have some of the technical skills that you would associate with people in Oregon. All right, now we go to Brazil. Okay, now you've actually got fairly lower literacy rates in a lot of the places using participatory budgeting. You can find all kinds of creative ways of framing and working through problems that don't necessarily involve writing words on a flip chart. Time and again, and we're going to go to Oregon and British Columbia, when you do these processes, especially if you have a public official in the room, a couple things happen. The public official says, well, this doesn't look like the public that I see. It actually looks like the public I have a feeling is out there, but when I have a hearing or something, all I see are the educated policy experts or the really angry person with an axe to grind. But they always see someone sitting around that table who looks like they don't want to play Scrabble, because they don't have a big vocabulary. And you can see that they're not volunteering to write things down. And when you get kind of technical, they might start looking at someone in the process who they've started to trust, that they know during the break they can say, what did that word mean? I don't want to ask, but what did it mean? But time and again, you see those people, and over the course of a multi-day process, starting to take charge, stepping up and saying, okay, now we promised we wouldn't forget this thing. Remember she came in here and she told us don't forget that thing, you forgot the thing. I remember the thing, did you? You know, and they have a certain power and authority because you can tell that they have risen so far in terms of their comfort with the process. Now, I want to stress something that Oregon did that a lot of these processes failed to do. They trained the participants. 5-day process. The first day was all about how to critically analyze an argument. What exactly is our job? What would this look like? And the first week was kind of rocky because they were trying to explain a process no one had ever done. But the second week, they got 2 people from week 1 and said, trust us, they can explain it to you, and it goes like this. And everyone was on board, and it was easy as pie the second week. The point is that whether we're talking about a country like Mexico where democracy drops out of the sky, and frankly people are skeptical at local, state, or national level that it really is a democracy, but you put them in a process like this, you give them some real authority, or at least the chance that they know they're going to get a response. They really tend to rise to the occasion, and if you're flexible with your process, you can accommodate all kinds of different literacies and so on. The deliberative poll makes a big show about the fact that they've done a deliberative poll in Europe in over 20 languages. So there can be all kinds of barriers to these processes. Some of them require some money to solve, but some of them, fortunately, require a little bit more faith and a lot of procedural creativity.